Welcome back for another episode of Steel Connections. We're your hosts, Brandy Martin and Sean Juber, and today we're talking culture. Sean, where do we want to start out?
I would say the things that I learned in this last week, you and I went to a conference where other fabricators in our area got together and discussed all the things that are helping and hurting. And I think the one common trend amongst all of them was how much driving a positive culture is helping their business success. And I think that's something that's really helping us for sure. And you're one of the drivers, the main driver of that.
Absolutely. Well, and listeners, this episode was actually Sean's idea. Just to recap, we won Best Place to Work recognition in 2023 back in August. And we had tried really hard to find or invite another guest who also was a winner of that award, but we weren't able to get them on board. So Sean said, to heck with it, let's just talk culture. We know what we're talking about. And I think we're pretty excited kind of thinking about how we dive into this over the last week at a conference that we had. And like you said, Sean, it is a huge portion of a company's success is this culture.
I think for our industry specifically, we're almost pioneering that. And I think that, for me specifically, I've never worked with anyone who was thinking about culture first or two, even concerned about it. Really, it's just, we're going to set the tone, we're going to make policies, and we're going to rule with the iron fist. And that's just how it's going to be. And now I think that we're adapting to, the current times. We're trying to appeal to a younger crowd to come join our industry, and those people are looking for a positive culture. And I think that we're offering that, and you can tell by that Best Place to Work award that this is something special.
No, and it matters. It matters a lot to this not younger generation coming in, right? They don't care as much about how much they make. It's how much they like working where they're at, and are they treated with respect and dignity. As much as I'd like to say we are the pioneers in our industry, I think we're one of many pioneers. I don't think there's a dominant leader here. I think there are a few that are starting to pop up out of the woodworks and wanting to align with us as they hear this is our mission. But I think it is something it's catching, and it's popping up. It's like little fires all over the place, right? And then us being more public about it and more vocal about it, I think it's uniting those fires into a huge wildfire. So my hope is that, it takes over and disrupts this whole industry. Going from the old traditional way of whoever's yelling the loudest wins, that just doesn't work. Nobody respects that, and nobody wants to be treated like that. So we should be focusing on a really good culture where people want to get up each day and go to work and do their best.
I know you want to share the credit with everyone, but I believe in my heart that at least where I've been in our industry, that we are the pioneers. I think we didn't come up with the idea. It's not ours. We can't copyright it or whatever you would say, but I think that we are driving it harder, and it means more to us. And I think the harder we drive it, the more traction we're going to get, and the more people are going to see that, your folks want to be on your team. They want to work their butts off for you when they trust and believe in your message and the things that you do. It's what can you do as a great leader? What can you do to make them happy at work as much as they're happy at home? And you can tell by how productive they are when they're on the shop floor, when they're, driving a load of steel to a job site, or if they're bidding a job for that matter. They're thinking about that now. That's not commonplace. Or at least it hasn't been. And I think it's having a huge impact on the way we look at the work we go after, the way we manage it, the way we perform it, even the way we bill it.
Agreed.
Those are all huge factors.
And the thing about it is this concept is not revolutionary. It's common sense, right? But I think what's critical, why everybody can't do it, is the execution. It's not easy to be a leader and be okay with being your every thought or idea being challenged, so you can give people, a voice at the table. That takes a lot of ego checking. It takes a lot of care to put yourself out of the mix and constantly think about your employees. But I mean, the reality is, as you climb that ladder, I think there's a confusion with people where they think the higher you go, the more people serve you. And that's bullshit. It really is. The higher you go, the more people you have to serve. And that's your entire role. Your entire role as a manager and a leader is to serve the people who are below you, making their jobs easier, making them happy and wanting to stay and retention. And then ultimately that comes and helps the business succeed. So,
Yeah, I would say the opposite of that. The people that think the higher you get, the more people that serve you. I mean, those are the people that are absolutely failing right now. They're struggling to find people. Their performance is suffering, and a true leader definitely lives to serve. And then the benefits from that are reciprocated in so many ways. It's just, I mean, you can't see around it anymore. That's the way.
yeah, it's the right thing to do. I mean, I don't respect that kind of treatment. Do you? Is that someone you?
No, definitely not.
Yeah, I'm not going to follow that person into the dark. I don't trust them. They don't treat me with any dignity. So,
Exactly. And there's people with big voices out there preaching this way too. I mean, look at Tony Robbins or Simon Sinek. Those guys are constantly preaching that as you become more and more of a leader, the more service you provide and perform for others around you, because that's what a leader is. You know, that's what a leader does.
absolutely. And since it's Monday and we're recording this on a Monday, my man crush Monday is Adam Grant. That's who I would add to that list. If you haven't read, if you haven't read anything by him, like he is phenomenal when he's talking about like organizational behavior. He's right up there with those guys. So,
I was just thinking that you know the people that motivate me are those, and you're one of them for sure. But it's so new that this method seems new to me. I mean, only in the last couple of years has this ever been something that people started talking about. And maybe I missed the bus, and it's been around longer, but it is more commonplace to hear culture focused discussions at the workplace than ever before.
well, yeah, because especially in our industry in construction and manufacturing, right? These are ideas that are what I call squishy. They're soft, right? I think a lot of times the cutthroat kind of go-getters who are competitors in their industry, they view that as weakness. And unfortunately, that's not true. You can be empathetic and care about your team but still be just as cutthroat and stand up for yourself and assertive, right? Maybe not cutthroat, that's the wrong word to use, but you can still be assertive and you can still be a dominant player. I don't consider myself like a doormat or a pushover. You back me into a corner, I'm going to respond, but I do it professionally and I do it the right way that I can go to sleep at night knowing that I've not shamed myself by lashing out and mistreating people. So,
Exactly. I think that the most important thing is that you stick to your guns on that. You're factual, you're fair, you're firm. And I think when the truth starts getting bent around some belief of the old system or whatever, you know, that's where the idea gets skewed. But I think if you stick to your guns and you're honest with yourself and you believe that this is the way, I mean, it's gonna just provide for itself.
I think you have to, right? I think if you talk the talk but you don't walk the walk, right? Like if I say I'm an empathetic person, I care about people, I'm going to try to make the best decision for those people involved, and then my actions don't match those words, I'm going to lose trust, which is the fundamental element of this whole thing. And then if I ever decide, oh shoot, I'm part of the problem and try to turn it around, it's going to take a million times longer to rebuild that trust or build the authentic version of that trust because I wasn't aligned. There was no alignment there. It was just words. It wasn't actual, behavior that was being backed up.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth there. I mean, walking the walk is the most important part, not just at work, but I mean, in your personal life. I mean, when you go home, when you're at the grocery store,
Yep.
you know, like I don't know how many times I see people leave a cart next to another car, and I'll grab that cart and take it back into the store or run it in the cart crowd, whatever. Just the stupid things that probably don't mean much to people, but I feel like I'm trying to walk the walk, you know?
Well, I would even add to that because I think we all have conflict. We all lose our temper at some point. And I'll tell you like a little short story. I won't give you all the details, but I was at a fast food restaurant picking up like dinner for my daughter because I was tired by the time I got home. And there was this gentleman who pulled up behind me and he was just like yelling at me because I wasn't ordering fast enough, but I had been asked to kind of pause and hold on by the the fast food restaurant. So I'm waiting for them to give me the okay to give an order. The guy's just calling me stupid, like going off, right? About how I don't know how to make orders. Anyways, long story short, he is so belligerent. He's so like wild and crazy and being nuts that I literally was going to get out of my car and go talk to this guy. And I stopped and I was like, is this really the impression that I want to, give on people? There are people watching. And this guy, does he really deserve me coming and giving him a piece of my mind because I'm angry and he was able to push my limits? And then, and truthfully, after like I broke, like I cooled down and left the situation. I was like, maybe the guy had some like mental ish things that he was working with that I wasn't aware of. And of course, had I found that out after I yelled at this guy, I would not have felt good. So it's a lot of self control that's involved. Like you said, personal life and in the workplace.
I think you bring up a good point too, because the one thing that I've noticed when most people are having an issue at work, it may not be with the work at all. It's as you dig in, they're having issues in their personal life, a spouse or sibling or a parent or something extra is going on, and driving the negativity that they may have, or maybe their performance is suffering because of it, or they're not sleeping well. There's always factors that you're unaware of, and you don't necessarily have to inquire about the actual facts and what they're going through, but just understanding the fact that they're going through something, and being a little more sensitive to that than normal, just giving them a little slack.
That's what makes you effective, right, as a leader. Because I think the old like phrase of check your emotions or your baggage at the door when you come to work, that's just insanity. It doesn't even make any sense. We're humans. We can't just check it and like box that up. I think there's a TV show where they literally like disconnect the brain. I don't remember. Do you know what I'm talking about? Which show?
I don't,
No. So
but
it's a
please.
total lead off, but yeah, they do some kind of surgery where when you come into work, you don't even remember your personal life, but when you go home, you don't even remember your work life. But short of that, we're humans. We can't do that.
Was
Um,
that Terminator?
no, it's a newer one. I think it's like on Apple TV or something. Severance or something like some show. Anyways, it's wild. But I mean, we all have
I
emotions.
mean, I guess for some people, checking, being able to check that box, like, hey, I left everything behind. I'm here just to focus for 8 or 10 or however many hours they work for that day. That must be graceful. But I know personally, I'm not one. I wear, whatever's going on in my life kind of out in the open, whether it helps me or hurts me. Sometimes it's probably a little of both. But things happen, and they affect you. You can't just bury it and bury it and bury it. I mean, eventually you're gonna just implode.
Well, emotion is what creates human connection, right? So if we're bottling up the stuff that makes you lose that connection. I mean, think of all the people that you named earlier, like Tony Robbins. Those people they're emotive, they're emotional when they speak. They give emotion behind it because that's what creates that human connection. If you have someone who's a robot who's not bringing any of their emotions, good, bad, or otherwise, you're not going to be inspired. There's going to be nothing that's connecting you to that person because they're robotic. So I think that we say these things because they're easier for us, like in leadership, they're easier for us to process if someone doesn't bring all their emotional baggage with us because that's complex and complicated. But if we were really to stop and think about it, that's not what we want. That doesn't lend itself to the outcome that we're really driving for, which is people who can lead others, people who can lead change, people who can do their job effectively. So
That's another pain point, right? Change. That's what brings the most emotion out of people, is when you implement change, because you get comfortable in your life, you get comfortable in your job, and change brings out emotional responses that are tough a lot of the time, and you have to be creative when you implement change, and understand how it's going to affect each person that has to adapt to that change, and maybe modify your approach individually between those people so they can understand where the change is coming from and what the change is going, like what that change is going to bring.
yep. Well, I mean, with change, you're going to be looking at fear. You're going to be looking at potentially you're doing something not right. You're not communicating it right. Right. There's a lot of things that you can you can find about your processes by understanding why people are like adverse to that change. For instance, change management, we don't always communicate it well, like why we're doing it, what we're doing, who to report to. And it creates frustration. And then people are balking at it and they just shut down, don't want to like embrace that change. But if you don't ask, like, well, what is it that's frustrating you? You'll never find out. Well, you've got a hole, you've got a gap in the way that you're rolling things out. Usually when I encounter conflict or something, I like to think, is this a me problem, like Brandy problem, the way I'm rolling it out? Is this a company problem? Or is this, the other person on the other end? And very rarely is it the other person on the other end. It's not the employee problem. It's usually how I'm delivering it or how the company has been developing the process. And then, like I said, very rarely it's the employee.
Well, and they don't always understand the driver for the change too. They didn't recognize that there was an issue driving the change. I know often we run into the people that are really confident and comfortable in their position. They've done things for several years a certain way and never seem to have had a problem with it. But they don't understand the level of analysis that goes into a company of our size or even smaller for that matter, that really, if you're not looking at your stuff all the time, you're looking at your financials, you're looking at your project backlog, you're looking at your schedules constantly to find holes or gaps or issues that you may uncover in a review. If you're not looking for those things, I mean, gosh, I can't imagine how your growth is going to be just stuck.
Well, I think most of those situations, it's where we're not being honest with ourselves, right? We feel that we're not being super productive or being, very successful at what we're doing, but we don't want to admit culpability in that success. Like you said, being able to check those things off the list. Are we staying in tune with how the project's running? Are we staying on top of budget? And a lot of times, it's not necessarily that makes that employee or that team member a bad person for acknowledging, hey, I'm not doing this the right way, because they may not have ever been trained on how to do it, right? It's never a one deep scenario when you're looking at these conflicts or these situations. There's always much more to it. You're dealing with ego, you're dealing with training, you're dealing about knowledge. And if in a perfect world, we would be able to box all that up and get right past it. But you just got to deal with it. That's the way it is. That's the reality. So does that make
I don't
sense?
know. Oh, absolutely. I think one of the things that's always tripped me up in my path to where I am now is my own personal ego. I thought, man, I'm really good at this, and I kind of relate it to golf, I guess. I'm a golf player, not very good by any means, but I think, gosh, man, I really got this thing down. I'm putting really well today. I got this figured out, and then as soon as I think I got that figured out, something happens, the environment changes or the speed will change, something will happen, and I have to go right back to the drawing board again. So like I feel like golf is so similar for me to my work every day, because as soon as I figure something out, I get another huge curveball, and I have to relearn everything I thought I just learned again.
That's so true. I had a golf pro that mentioned that same thing. It's always changing. And you even talk to the pros and they will never tell you, yeah, I'm really good at golf. They'll always say, I'm all right. I can golf, because things change all the time. They can go out and have a terrible day too. So
Yeah, I think if you're honest with yourself, you're gonna know that there's speed bumps along the way, no matter how good you're running, how smooth it is. I almost worry when it goes smoothly, like for too long, that I'm overlooking something that's really hurting.
what am I
And
missing? Yep.
yeah, what are we missing? Is there some kind of fire brewing that we just don't know, don't see? What's going to hurt us?
Right. Because no company is perfect. You've always got challenges. You've always got issues and conflict. But if you aren't hearing about it, it doesn't mean that they don't exist. It just means you aren't hearing about it. And so you can't effectuate or change it and fix it. So I think that it kind of lends itself to like the importance of having that psychological safety in your company and being in tune and talking with your team members. From doesn't matter if they're entry position all clear to the top, but be talking with them and developing that trust so that when things are going haywire, you're going to hear about it so you can correct it.
Yeah, I think that's probably the worst thing as a manager is there's a level of intimidation that comes with the position. I think breaking that down so people feel comfortable, like you said, to come bring up the issues, no matter how small, because the small one, they think, oh, this is small. We had say we're using a bad type of consumable. We had a grinding mill fall apart. It could be something that's just overall bad with the product, and everyone's, sitting on a time bomb waiting for this thing to blow up in our face. And that small thing for that one person to bring up to you, I mean, if you catch it at the right time, you could save yourself major injuries, major cost impacts, all kinds of stuff.
Communication. I think it goes back to fostering that communication and that psychological safety, that feeling safe to voice those issues. It goes back to being able to check your ego and then also being a lifelong learner, right? Knowing that I don't know it all. I might have had a lot of experiences, I know a lot of things, but I don't know it all. And I think if you have that approach with your team members and ask questions and genuinely listen to what they're saying, I think it goes a long way with creating that productive culture.
It does. Some years back, I worked with a business owner he was that type of person that believed that he was 100% better than anybody else. He promoted that. He would have, big team meetings where, the first thing out of his mouth is, we're world class, we're number one, we're better than all of our competition. Don't talk to them, don't associate with them. Anytime they talk to you, they're trying to figure out what our process is and steal it because we're the best. And and I love the confidence side of that, but boy, has that been a horrible approach for one business because he carries that ego into the room when he's trying to land a job, and it just is turned off immediately by his potential customers. And then two, the employees are just, they don't enjoy their work. They don't enjoy the fact that, like, they're told literally not to associate with anyone else in the industry. That you're taught, you foster this almost aggression towards your fellow people in the industry, the people that you should be trying to work with and trying to partner with to grow and be better. And you kind of foster this, like, almost hatred towards them. And I know personally, because it started to affect me that way. And I think, leaving that place behind me, I realized how much it had impacted my own personal life, and not just professionally, but my personal life. I'm like, gosh, I'm saying rude things to people that I wouldn't normally say, or I'm, not helping somebody that I normally would help. And it's just not healthy for a business at all. Or, I mean, personally, now I see it as well.
It's training. I think we all have those in our closets. But hearing that, there's two concerns I have for as a leader. First, you're creating a company that's in a silo. So yeah, that's great as long as you can maintain and continue to be number one all the time. If not, who are you going to lean on to help you, right? Like to help you from falling. What do they say? The higher you climb, the harder you fall, or the further you fall. I mean, you're making that a reality. The second thing is that you're not training your team to be resilient. So if you always think you are number one, you are perfect, you cannot do anything wrong. When things do go wrong, every company has their failures. They always meet their obstacles. Your team is going to take that too hard that they are not going to be able to pivot and be resilient to make the changes that they need to get back on track. But if you approach it from a different perspective, like we aren't number one, we aren't perfect, we're doing what we need to do. I mean, you can be satisfied with meeting the goals that you've set out for yourself. You can be proud of that, but recognize that failures come and you can learn from them. It's a different mindset and it makes you more resilient. Like, yeah, we had a huge screw up, huge hiccup, but here's what we're doing to get it back on course. That's proactive and that's a better mentality to have.
Yeah, those hiccups, I think now looking at them when they do happen, no matter how large those hiccups are, they seem like they can be overcome. Like you can find a way out. But I'll tell you, back then, when those hiccups happened, they seemed so catastrophic, and it stopped everyone in their tracks. You had to have this big round table of thought to try and figure it out because nobody's thinking like that on a regular basis. Yeah, they think they're the best. So why think outside the box? Why be creative?
Well, now you're dealing with pride and ego too on top of that. So people are tying a personal attachment to this, a personal feeling of shame and failure to the scenario. So now you got to get that all out of the way so you can solve the problem, right? So I just think that there's a quicker line between hiccups and resolution and solutions if you can get that ego out. If you can create a culture that's more humble and more focused on learning from mistakes, because mistakes happen, they are lessons, don't repeat them, but there's tuition and value in it. I think you're going to have a better culture and a better um, a ship that can pivot a lot faster than.
One and just the balance between your work and your home life because of that lens. You know, you see things from this positive culture lens. Like the things that I take home from work now, I have a conversation with my wife, for instance, and we talk about um, the hurdles for the day, or if there's a struggle or a problem that comes up, and the conversation even at home is so much more productive because of the way we look at our problems now versus the way I looked at them before. And I think everything about it, and professionally and personally, they're more productive because of it.
Yep. It, I would agree with that. It's a proactive approach and you're focusing on a solution. I think the other thing that might add to it, I don't want to speak for you, but there's passion that goes into what you do when you like where you work. And so when the hard times come, it's easier to get through. It's easier to overcome those challenges and those obstacles in your mind than a place that really drags and you hate working there. It's negative. It's full of just like division. Those negative situations, those obstacles really impact you a lot harder when it's a crappy place to work.
They do, and I think the other really neat thing is that um, that in that previous situation, there's three or four people in the company that provide all the thought for everyone else. Where now we are promoting thought leaders throughout the company, and they're they support us, they bolster us. So if things are happening, they're thinking of the way out too, not just us. So we have a lot more minds working on the same problem, and it's so much more productive.
Studies will show you that diverse cultures that are focused on diversity, are much more innovative. And if you kind of think it through, that makes sense, right? If you have like the three people like you're talking about that are making all the decisions that are, they're all the creative juice in a company, you are so much more limited because you're not taking advantage of the other 100 people who might have ideas. You may not use them all, but you are missing out on so many other ways of looking at the same situation and innovation and design because you're not engaging everybody else.
True.
Diverse
I think
perspectives are
that's
huge.
Yeah, seriously. I think you add so many more tools to your toolbox. Um, it's just so supportive and positive. I know that. And I was talking to one of our material handlers the other day, and he said, if we try to do this like this, we could be so much more efficient. I was like, man, I never looked at it like that before. I appreciate the thought.
Well, if you think that it goes back to where we're talking about leadership, right? Leadership is there to empower our team members, right? To serve them. But I was guilty of this too when I first came into my first management position. When you go up into management, you feel like you have to have all the answers. You have to direct your team. And that's a load of crock because really what you need to do is you need to empower your team to, as a collective group, solve the problem. So, talking to the people who are on the ground floor doing those tasks, Sean, that's excellent. That's what we should be doing. That's how, because they intimately know more about the process than we could ever know about it by watching it or just standing there or,
Because they
however you
do it
might observe,
day in
right?
and day out.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
they're
so they might have an easy solution where we would take months to figure it out.
exactly. I think that's been my experience more often than not lately, is just getting out and talking with the folks on the at the roots. They're at the foundation of our business, and they do know the better way.
Yep. Each of their brains like contains gold. If we can just unlock that and figure out how to glean that from them so we can implement it in the company, that's um this last week when we were at this conference, we had I think it was Matt who came up and asked me that he had heard about the changes happening at Instafab, that he had saw that I had come in and he had heard some of the early on changes I had made before you came on board. And he was interested in my perspective because I had not been a subcontractor and doing what we do in steel. And so he wanted to know kind of what the secret sauce of all this change and transformation was. And I did not have a good answer for him. And so I've been thinking a lot about it. Like, well, shoot, what did I do? Why did I make these decisions? And I think first, I mean, the old practice that I came from of coming in and fixing distressed businesses, I think that became innate. So that was to my advantage. But it really does flow back to culture. I think the first thing, like if we were to pick this culture thing apart and talk to our listeners about like actionable takeaways here and how they implement this at their own businesses, I think the first step is developing trust in our team members. And it is by going out and talking to every single person, finding out what their opinions are, what are their suggestions, just intimately listening to them. Like, don't be thinking about what you're going to say next or if you're going to have an objection, but take notes, talk to them, and actually listen. And then build the trust, make sure that there's consistency that is with your actions and what you're saying. But then also, I think building trust when those hard decisions show their face, I think it's really critical to have a really consistent way and good way of managing that and making your decisions, and then communicating that to you and creating consistency with your team members and knowing how you might respond to that situation. All of those things really create the foundation of a good culture that you can grow from.
They do. I think that's so critical, that trust building, and I think we've been doing a ton of that over this last, I don't know, year and change now that the people truly believe that they can come. You can tell people as a manager, I have an open door policy. That's great if they're afraid to walk into your office. You know what I mean? That what is that doing for you? But if you have the open door policy, I don't know, maybe that's an old expression. It doesn't even work anymore. Um, but if people trust you, they will come talk to you, whether your door's open or not. They will come find you, say, "Hey, I see something that might hurt us. It might be hurting us, and here's what I think we could do about it." And if you're not out there talking to your people and you're not just rallying them when things are good or beating them when things are bad. I mean, you're just out there reinforcing what they do every day and asking for their input, making them feel like they add to your value, they add to your collective value as a team, and they do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, and I was thinking about one of our team members who told one of the consultants we're working with that when she went and gave advice to our leadership team that she didn't know what their role was in the company. And I think that is the biggest win, is that person felt comfortable coming to them. But it tells you if they had known the role or the title of that person, they wouldn't have said anything. But the way that the situation was handled and the invitation for the feedback was handled, that it was inviting enough that they came and talked to them without figuring out who this person is. So, I mean, I hate some of those buzzwords of I have an open door policy. We're creating synergies. There's all these buzzwords out there that people want to use all the time. And it's like, what does that mean though? I'm not an eloquent speaker. I mean, I think we all know that. I'm not an eloquent speaker. But my actions and I think the message that I impress when I'm talking with people is what gets through to them. That's what leaves them. And I think it's helped us define this culture where people feel comfortable. And they trust what we're saying. We don't have to have the perfect words. It's the actions behind those words that really matter.
That's so true, and I think we're definitely seeing the effects of it now, because they know that we do have not just our own personal agenda, that it is we are fighting, we are living, we are working hard for the people, and it's not the other way around.
Well, I think about when you came in too, because you had a lot of success, early success with the team and getting them to embrace you when you stepped in as general manager. And I think what separated for you from the GMs of old at Instafab is that you talked with people, you listened with them, you developed relationships with them. If something wasn't right, you decided you were going to fix it, right? Like they felt heard, and people need to feel heard. So I think that it contributes to a lot of the success that you even had.
Yeah, and definitely as as a manager, whether you're a lower level manager or upper level manager, it's easy to get caught up all the tasks in front of you and forget that the roots of being a good manager, getting out there and talking with people. I find myself in that situation often where I'm like, oh man, I spent the last 3 days in my office doing nothing but pounding my keyboard. Like I gotta get out there. Like they're gonna think I forgot about them.
I get the same way. And then I mean, I've got to do what I got to do, but at the same time, it's like, how do I get out there and talk with people too? Um, when it comes down to performance, Sean, what do you think about when you've got, let me think, how am I going to articulate this? I think I see a lot of managers and leaders where frustration starts to leak and how they damage their teams is when they're focused on performance. Like the team's performance isn't matching the goal or what they want. And you start seeing managers press harder, start, you know, breaking out of the box and yelling and freaking out. Um, what are your
Or
thoughts?
they think the answer is more hours. They don't look at the tools they've provided to get the work done in the first place. Did I provide you with an opportunity for success when I gave you this work?
Yeah,
Did I set you up for failure? You know what I mean? That's that reflection that you need when that work is given, that it will help you in that situation for sure. Because 9 times out of 10, it's the driver is that you did not set up your team for success.
absolutely. Am I the problem? Right? Am I part of the problem? I agree with that. And I always find it interesting that you can have these people who are great leaders until they're under that pressure, under that stress, and then they buckle because they're pushing their team too hard because they're trying to meet these goals. When if they thought about the actual end goal is to meet these performance objectives and retain the team they have and not destroy them, not break them down. Because you can push hard and hard, break everybody down. But after you met that goal, now you've got a broken team. So I think if they were to step back and think about it, take a deep breather, they would find that, like you said, it's probably a process issue that they've got to work on.
Well, and that method with the broken team too. I mean, then the next thing comes around, and you're attacking what could be a great job for your company, or a great job, for that month or that week or whatever it is. Your team is broken, and when the teams are broken, people are frustrated with work. They start looking for new jobs. And I think the biggest culture killer is your retention, your ability to retain good employees because you support them properly. Having to retrain new people or lose good people to somewhere else because you haven't supported them, you haven't set them up for success. I mean, that's the biggest killer there is.
Well, I think to add to that, yes, and to add to that is when you break your team in that way, you lose trust. They stop trusting you. They trust when you're under pressure that you're going to respond that way negatively. And I bet you would start seeing that your team's probably holding back things that might get you angry and might frustrate you. Things that might set you off because they don't want to deal with that side of that leader.
Well, and your lower level leaders, I know that I feel like um, there's a phrase that we used to use. It's like you create the weather, right? So I know that if I come in hot and I'm frustrated with something and I communicate it like that, that when it's communicated from the next person to the next person, it's going to get more and more and more negative. It's going to have more and more horrible effects on how things are going. So I have to kind of step back, get out of that mindset, kind of rethink my approach and think, how is this going to trickle down to everyone else?
I think of it a lot like leadership, like child rearing or family management, like how you deal with your family. And to your point about how you show up and the weather you create, I always recognized that with my own family, if there was an emergency or a situation that was stressful and my husband's stressing out, my daughter's stressing out and panicking, if I engaged in that, it's going to spin out of control. Everyone's going to freak out. It's just going to blow up. It's going to be a mess. But if I were controlled and I was like logically thinking things through, like, it's okay, we'll get through it, let's focus on the solution, everything would just simmer out and it'd be fine. And it's the same way in the work environment. Everybody that works with you, they're looking to you for your response. So if you are panicking and you're freaking out and you're showing your frustration everywhere, that's going to give license to them to do the same thing. If you're talking badly about your boss or your coworkers, you're telling your team that that's okay for them to do to you. And then if you're controlled and you're just focusing on the solution, you're training your team. That's how you get through situations. We're logical, we're level headed, get the stress out of the way so we can focus on the solution. And they're going to respect that and they're going to replicate that as well.
And they do. I think we're seeing that now that more often than not, when there's an issue that arises or some kind of problem, the people are thinking about the way out of that before you ever even hear about it. Whereas the mindset before was, oh, I got this problem, I'm just going to go communicate that and hear whatever the solution is. So now they are problem solvers. They're real thinkers. They're providing so much more value added resource to your company. I mean, gosh, I mean, Instafab alone is we have so many more people thinking outside the box now. I mean, gosh, I can't even fathom what it's going to be like when we're 100% at that capacity where everyone is producing these big thought processes.
It's a lot on our shoulders too, to maintain it. I think I don't think that everyone was problem solvers for a while. They didn't feel like they had license because they were always directed to what to do. They were told what to do. We were giving them the answers. Maybe not us, but the Instafab team. I think what changes that mentality and that mindset is when you start asking questions. Just like when you're raising your child, if you tell your child every single answer, they're only going to look to you for the answer, which might make you feel real good as a parent, but it doesn't do them any service or any justice. But if you start asking them questions and asking that, forcing them to go through the exercise in their own brain, you're training them to think the way that you think, and you're guiding them to that answer. And that makes it much more effective as a team where you guys can divide and can't conquer, and makes you actually a better leader. If your team doesn't need you, if you can walk away from your team and they can still think and function, that shows that you're a strong leader. You've taught them the way that they need to be taught.
Well, I think we're kind of getting to witness that firsthand right now. Obviously, as we're both, on opposite ends of the country. Um,
Yes.
and our team, I've been in contact this morning, which is great, but not with any issues. I think that they were keeping me in the loop. They had a couple of solutions that they wanted to run by, like, hey, this is going on. I'm going to do this, or this. Um, and I didn't even have to have a response to that. I said, you know what, you're doing great. You decide. And I haven't felt so confident being away from the team as I do right now, because I know that they're thinking like we think. They're driving the way we drive, and they're communicating that to everyone else too.
You built that. That's excellent. That's a sign of a good leader.
Well, we have built that. I think it's great though. I haven't felt. I mean, I've vacations as a whole have been something that I've always struggled with, because you're like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen while I'm gone? But I have confidence in my team. I have confidence in the process. I have confidence in uh, our customers that we work with. They believe that we are competent and confident in what we do, and that we find solutions. That doesn't happen everywhere. Like you always say, we're solution seekers.
Problem solvers, yep, solution seekers. It's one of our values. So, Sean, if we were to give advice to our listeners about how they can start implementing it at their own place, what advice would you give them?
I think that if it were me to start over and I could help someone, I would say walk up to someone that you don't have a relationship with, and ask them how they are doing, just personally, and break the ice, and maybe take a walk together, find out a little bit about them, find out how their work is going, find out how they sleep at night. Just ask the questions that they would not normally hear from their leader. you know be uncomfortable, be okay with being uncomfortable. Maybe share a little bit about yourself. Create a bond with anybody and everybody that you can there, and um, that bond will pay dividends.
Yeah, especially if you're respectful of them. For me, I think I would take some time if I was starting on this journey and write down what it is that you want in your own leader, somebody you would follow, and write that down. And then write down all the things that you don't want in a leader that you don't want to work for, and then make that your guiding path. You don't like someone who yells at you and calls you terrible names. Don't do it to other people. I think that's a really good start. And then I think find somebody who is your hero that you look up to. Find somebody that embodies what you want to be as a leader and the culture that you want to have as a company, and reach out to them or start emulating and understanding what their thought process is behind why they do what they do and implement it. I think those are all good things to do to start.
Yeah, I think the foundation to being a good leader and driving a culture is absolute self-reflection
100%.
and not being afraid of the answers that you might get when you ask yourself those hard questions. Are you the person that you would want to be, or you want to follow, you want to be led by? And if that answer isn't 100% absolutely yes, then you got some work to do. I have tons of work to do. I will always have work to do, but I'm going to ask myself that question all the time. What am I doing that I wouldn't like if someone were doing to me? And I know that might turn people off and that sounds sensitive, but I'll tell you that I don't want to work for somebody who's going to treat me like crap.
No, no. And I know there's going to be conflict that comes up. I'm a realist, but it's how you deliver that conflict and how you navigate that conflict with me is going to make the difference with our relationship and how I want to continue my relationship with the company. So,
I was thinking for me personally, I've never felt more productive in my career than when I feel like I'm truly part of a team. And I think that feeling alone is what drives success in culture, what drives success in business and production. It's just having that feeling like you're a part of something bigger and that you're all working towards the common goal together successfully. And and that, man, that is the best feeling there is. I've been trying to communicate that with my own son, who's, he's not a big team sport person. He wants to swim on his own. He wants to golf on his own, whatever. But having that feeling of winning with a team and everybody working hard to achieve the same goal is, I mean, that's one of those feelings that gets me up every day. I love that feeling.
it's a basic human need is being needed and belonging, a sense of belonging. I was like your son when I was younger though too. And it took a long, hard, I mean, had I recognized the importance of having a community and people to lean on and they lean on you and how much easier it makes it, I would have scrapped that a long time ago.
Right.
I think the other thing too, just to as parting wisdom, is be okay with not having all the answers. You could even share it with your team. I think they respect that a lot. If you say, "I actually don't know the answer to that, but I'll find out for you. I'll look into it." That's okay. That's human. We don't have all the answers.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that's the probably the most humbling thing to hear is I don't know, but I'm gonna go figure it out for you, or at least give the help. And like you said, like bringing up your children, not just giving all the answers, or even saying, hey, I don't know. Let me do some research. Let me read a book. Let me ask someone else. Let me call somebody and one of our trade partners and say, hey man, I got this situation. Have you run across this before? Do you know what to do here?
Yep.
Having those resources is, gosh, it's huge.
All right. Well, go ahead and wrap it up. I thanks listeners for hearing me and Sean talk tonight on culture. And if you ever want a few tips or any guidance, feel free to reach out to us and we'd love to talk to you about it more.
Absolutely.